Everything we desire is already within us. You have the power and the energy to create the life you desire in you.
You were the first man that I ever loved. God sent me to you, a gift from above. See, there's nothing like a father's love. I'm so thankful to the stars above. God gave me to you and you to me. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have this family. You raised me up and taught me the ways that I should go. And even though you're gone, you promised to never let go. Said you'll always be the best man that I know. No matter how far that I go, no matter how old that I grow, you know you'll always be my hero, the best man that I know. No matter how far that I go, no matter how old that I grow, you know you'll always be my hero. You've always been my hero. You've always been my hero. You've always been you'll always be my number one. You'll always be. You always knew that I would do great things. You always gave your last, you cared and you covered me. Though the days and years may roll, I'll never let you go. I'll miss you and wish you could be holding me. Said you'll always be the best man that I know. No matter how far that I go, no matter how old that I grow, you know you'll always be my hero, the best man that I know. No matter how far that I go, no matter how old that I grow, you know you'll always be my hero. You've always been 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 my number one.
Express your greatness, your amazing self and soul. You're amazing.
I love you, Daddy. Said you'll always be the best man that I know. No matter how far that I go, no matter how old that I grow, you'll know you'll always be my hero, the best man that I know. No matter how far that I go, no matter how old that you'll know you'll always be my hero. My hero. Be my hero.
You can fly like an eagle, enjoy the high reaches, and become the eagle you were birthed to be. I believe you can fly.
I have some things to share with you that I've never shared before publicly with anybody.
Carlton, you die for what you believe.
Jesus is the Savior of the world, the whole world, all men.
He's affecting the world. The world. He's a pastor that thinks world. And that's what God wants.
He did not come into the world to condemn the world, but that through him the world might be saved. If he didn't condemn, why do we? That's all I'm saying.
Brother, you ain't just here to have a little meeting. God's called this thing. God said, all right, I don't want you to walk in no footprints that are already there. He creates some new ones.
B.E. Paulk is one of my spiritual sons. He's my first expansion consciousness son.
When Bishop Pearson transitioned, a lot is on my shoulders now. And I don't perceive myself as the successor of Carlton Pearson. I perceive it as a succession. But there have to be some voices who can speak and know what he taught and give it and be able to answer the questions. I know that he prepared me for this moment.
Welcome, 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 family. We're glad you are in the house tonight. It's been several weeks since we've been together, and so welcome back. Happy New Year, Happy New You. Can you believe it's 2025? How did that? When did that happen? I was born in 1972, so I guess the end of the 60s, early 70s. I remember watching. How many of you watched the cartoon The Jetsons? Did you watch that as a kid? We watched shows like The Land of the Lost, Star Trek, Star Wars. We thought by 2025 we would just be teleporting to Jupiter 7 or another galaxy outside the Milky Way. And of course, we have a lot of technology and advancement, but we are here 25 years into the second millennium. Well, anyway, good to have you tonight. Welcome to Carlton D. Pearson's The Gospel of Inclusion. We certainly are still missing our spiritual father, the reformer, the revolutionary, I believe, one of the greatest voices of church ecclesiology and reform in the 20th century. No question about that. You have Dr. Howard Thurman, you have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you have voices like Bishop John Shelby Spong, and then you have the voice of Bishop Carlton D. Pearson, who at the apex of his gospel Hollywood career, filling stadiums of people with his Azusa conferences, obviously known internationally, the first, other than Reverend Ike Encoder, the first man or person of color to have a weekly nationally syndicated television program. And so certainly a person of history who was not willing to sell his soul for theology that kept people in bondage and in the baggage of religious condemnation and restriction. And so we honor certainly our spiritual father on this first Tuesday night of January. We love you, Bishop Carlton D. Pearson. Whatever iteration, dimension that you were in, thank you for what you gave to us, for what you gave up for us. We stand on your shoulders, and we certainly want to make you proud of our modeling and messaging of the gospel of inclusion. Well, welcome once again to the gospel of inclusion. If you are a regular, welcome back to our family. If you're new tonight and you're just interested in talking about the movie Wicked, then welcome. If you're curious, if you're cautious, if you are conditioned into evangelical fundamentalism, if you're a biblical inerrant, if you believe that the Bible is infallible, you're welcome in this place. We are going to expose you tonight a little bit, at least, to biblical scholarship that helps us to study to show ourselves approved, rightly dividing the word of truth from what is soulish and what is spirit. And all of that takes a little bit of skill and a little bit of exposure to the higher mind. And so wherever you are, we know that change is coming into your life, but it comes at your own pace and in your own space. We certainly don't want to force feed you tonight. Eat what you can. We're glad that you are in the house. All right. How many of you have
shouts out?
Shouts out. Yeah, let's do some shouts out.
All right. First one.
Let me fix my collar while we're doing some shouts out.
Because even I want to know if this was intentional.
Boop, boop, boop.
So here's the first comment.
What's the first comment? The green sweater, the theme of the show. Yes,
Did
Cynthia.
you do this on purpose?
Cynthia, look, I have a green watch on. I have a green tie on. You might have seen that in the opening of the show. I wore this in Tulsa when I did the weekend of seminary at All Souls. I have a green sweater on. Yes, I even had a green hat on earlier because we are going to talk about
Where's your green hat?
It's in my car. I left it in the car.
Should I go get it?
Go get it.
Okay.
It might be, or it might, no, it's in the living room right there on the couch. Actually, this is a gift from the Larry Reed camp. One of my closest friends, Shamako Bryant. Love you, Shamako. He's a dear, precious soul. Bought me this green hat for my birthday. And actually, I still haven't taken, look, I'm straight to Kate. I haven't taken the tag off yet. I like to wear my tag outside. So this is my, let's see. This is my green hat, but I'll make a confession tonight. I have an enormous head. I had to wear a special sized football helmet when I played football as a kid. And so this hat barely fits over my huge cranium. But yes, I have the green hat on tonight, hiding my bald head. But yes, green is the theme for tonight. We're going to talk about wicked. What does it mean to be green? Woo, so many different applications. What an amazing book, stage play. Brandy and Esther and I saw the Broadway production at the Fox Theater, the historic Fox Theater in Atlanta a couple of years ago. Saw the movie recently, watched the Golden Globes Sunday night. I cry every time I hear the song, I'm Not That Girl. Cynthia Erivo just absolutely killed it. Just what a beautiful narrative. All right, some more shouts out, sorry. Hey, Miss Emma, good evening, everyone. Ruben Goff, hey, my buddy. Shouts out to you. Happy New Year to you and your mom.
It's freezing.
I'm sure it's freezing. We think we're cold in Georgia in the 20s. I'm sure it's nothing like Illinois, so stay warm, Ruben. Elise, good evening, beautiful flower. Mary Lewis, good evening. Hey, Miss Anna Fanay Denham. Hey, Finey Denham. I saw the back of your head this morning. Mary Lewis, it's 39 degrees in Odessa, Texas. That's cold for Odessa. That's just unheard of. Imogen, hey Mother White from Tulsa is watching. Lorraine Mamola, hey Lorraine, I think that's New York, I believe. Yes. Lorraine, yeah. You're familiar with Broadway, Lorraine, I believe. Elaine Jellybean Jeffries, keep warm family. Good to see you, Elaine. Elise, 31 degrees, feels like 24 in McKinney, Texas. Yeah, Texas people, you guys aren't used to that. Atlanta gets a little bit colder than Texas, but we don't get Illinois cold. We don't do that. Ray Mejia, it's freezing in Tulsa. Hey, Tulsa fan. Happy New Year. Cynthia, let's said, I'm pleased to be part of this discussion. I think it's going to be an amazing discussion tonight. Mike Williams, it's been 3 weeks. So glad to be here with my enlightened brethren and sistren. I haven't seen y'all since last year. Mike Williams is family to us for sure. John Grant, the Third Halo family. Hey, welcome back, John.
Let's see, a couple more.
CJ, welcome back. CJ Henry, welcome back. Beautiful face. Happy New Year. Star Trek Lost. Yes, Lost in Space. You remember that, Ruben? Yeah, we're dating ourselves a little bit, aren't we? Meet George Jetson, his son Elroy. Remember the dog? Remember their dog? Was it? I forget the dog. You have to help me with that. What was the dog's name? Pluto or something?
Maybe
in Pluto is the dog's name. Anyway. Yeah, if you put the Jetsons and the Flintstones in a bag, you might get the year 2000. Who knows? Donald Robinson. Let's see. Good evening. Good evening to you, Donald. Hey, Dr. King Michael Frazier. Happy New Year, my Spirit and Truth family. We love you, sir. Thanks for being here tonight. I like the sweater. This was given to me by my lifelong best friend, Robert Randall Renfro. He donated this sweater to me, and I try to make good use of it. I'm sure I don't treat it as good as he did. It's not easy being green. Yes, Kermit the Frog. He was in an abusive relationship with Miss Piggy, wasn't he, Mike? I feel like Miss Piggy was physically and emotionally abusive of Kermit. That wasn't right. Kermit deserved better. All right. Let's see. DST Capricorn. Good evening, Bishop, First Lady. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to the Gospel of Inclusion. Hey, Bishop McClary. Yes, Bishop Mr. Rogers. I did a sermon some years ago, Bishop McClary, where I changed shoes and changed my jacket. And I read from a children's book called The Old Turtle. If you have not read The Old Turtle, Bishop McClary, it will change your life. It's only maybe 30 pages. It's a children's book. but the wisdom from Old Turtle about coexistence and celebrating other cultures and differences, just absolutely beautiful. Thanks, Bishop. Let's see, Stana, Ray Lowell, I believe. Blessed evening to all. Glad you're here. Shell Lee, greetings. I believe that is the Bay Area, California. We have friends in San Francisco. Shout out to Mark and Lynn Walker in San Francisco area. Astro, yes.
Look,
Not Pluto.
Everybody jumped in and knew that it
Thank
was
you,
Astro.
Ruben. It was Astro. It was a dog. Don't you wish that you could just wake up in the morning, get on the conveyor belt, and everything dress you and feed you and do your? I don't have much hair to do, but yeah, I think maybe one day we'll get to the Jetsons. Who knows? All right, that's all. I think that's all the shouts out for now. So welcome once again. We're going to talk tonight about the phenomenon.
One more for you.
One more, sorry. Oh my goodness, Luis Melancia, greetings from Recife, Brazil. Advanced blessings, Luis, who is aspiring, intentionally opening an inclusive church in Recife, Brazil this year. We're so happy for you, so grateful for you, for your mind, for what you bring to the architecture of inclusion. We certainly love you. We honor you, sir. Thank you for being here.
And really quickly, just King Michael Frazier, Dr. Frazier. Yes, let me respond to you on here, and I'll tell you how to reach us with.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Absolutely. Thank you in advance. So what does it mean to be green? The phenomenon of the stage play movie Wicked. What an amazing kind of spinoff of the movie the Wizard of Oz, which I think, you guys can correct me, I think was the first motion picture where color, I think it was called, what was
Wizard of Oz?
The Wizard of Oz, I think, was the first that it transitioned into color. And I think it was the first time we had color television or color cinema. And that was called, what was the color called? It was like Magic Color. Or if my dad's watching, he would know what it's
Somebody
called.
will know.
Somebody will know. It's something color, like Technicolor, I think was maybe the phrase. But, leave it, let me say this just kind of off the cuff. Leave it to Hollywood and the secular world to teach us more about the nature, Technicolor, more about the nature and character of the love of God than the evangelical church. Whoops, I did it again. Yeah, I said it. Leave it to Hollywood. Leave it to the secular world to teach us. Leave it to the corporate world to teach us about diversity, equity, inclusion, more than the church that is under the spell of biblical inerrancy. And if you are in any way, shape, or form exposed to biblical scholarship, you know that the Bible is not univocal. It is multivocal. It's designed that way. There's no way to reconcile biblical transgressions as much as Christian apologists would like to reconcile it. Why? Because the end game is hierarchy. Christianity is greater than everyone else. Jesus is greater than all the other Savior characters. The Bible is the greatest book ever written. All of it is human's influence. And so we are willing at the Gospel of Inclusion to recognize that the Bible is amazingly beautiful. We should glean what we can from it. And it's also horribly terrible genocide, homophobia, subjugation of women, people of color, of otherness. It's horrible. Yet we choose not to throw it away. We find a moderation. So in that framework, Wicked brings to us some incredible narratives. This is my what we would call, this is my briar patch. I love doing this because the first book that I ever wrote was called Finding Sacred in the Secular. I was waking up to secular voices that were prophetically speaking into society, even more at sometimes even more specifically than prophetic pulpits. I grew up listening to gangster rap, NWA, Public Enemy. I grew up listening to Lenny Kravitz, to Simon and Garfunkel, to 60s music, Jimi Hendrix said, the world will only know peace when it celebrates love more than it celebrates power. That's a prophetic voice. I don't care how and when Jimi Hendrix died. That was a prophet among us that wasn't ordained, but he was ordained to the secular world. And so Yet again, in the 2000s, we have the advent of Wicked, that is a secular expression speaking sacredly and prophetically into society, even when the church can't hear beyond its patriarchy, beyond its biblical conditioning and indoctrinations. And so sometimes, as Jesus would say, the rocks have to cry out. Yeah, Jesus asked a question one day. He was walking through, I forget the city, I'd have to do the research again. He was walking through a metropolitan area, and he said, he just stopped all of a sudden and asked his disciples, what is this generation like? And of course, it was a rhetorical question. But he said, this generation is like children sitting in the marketplace, playing their flutes for us, but we would not lament to their song. Woo! Talk, Jesus. Talk, preacher. Talk your shift. That's what people say to me when they, I think when my tribe saw me speaking at Bishop Pearson's eulogy, they were texting me, talk your shift, talk your, and the F wasn't in there, so I'll say that. But Jesus was talking his stuff right here. What are they like? The marketplace is playing a song for us, but our religious ears are not willing to hear it. Of course, I have my own critique of gangster rap, but they were crying to us. They were saying, do you understand? I remember Coolio. Anybody remember Coolio? He wrote a song called Gangster's Paradise. And it talked about the misery of growing up in a socioeconomically disenfranchisement and living at the margins of life in a westernized capitalistic society. We needed to see that, especially people of any sort of white privilege, or even the Black middle class, needed to hear what the projects in the ghettos were saying to us. Marvin Gaye was that voice for us. In the white world, at least somewhat white, alternative rock and roll. At the end of the 80s, you have the advent of kind of the big hair bands going into Nirvana, Soundgarden, the Foo Fighters, Stone Temple Pilots, Blind Melon. All these white alternative groups were saying, there's more than just rock and roll, sex, and drugs. There are some real people that are hurting. There's some real issues going on here. Silverchair, one of my favorite groups from the UK. And so in that way, we find ourselves again with a secular prophet, Wicked, speaking some things into our life. By the way, did you guys see Conclave win some awards at the Golden Globes? Yeah. Look at Conclave to helping us learn about inclusion a little bit. All right, so I'm going to open it up for some questions. I want to just give you some prompts, and then I want you guys to talk. We'll talk tonight. What does the green mean? Of course, I wore green tonight for Wicked. What does the green represent? Is it just green skin? Is it just the character Elphaba? Or can we take that green framework and apply that to other marginalized groups? Disenfranchisement. In some ways, a critique of hegemony and an exposure to the counterculture voice. What does the green mean? And what does it mean in your life? What does green mean for you? That's a good prompt. Is Wicked the definition of wicked, because Elphaba was considered wicked? Does that really just mean different? So I'll give you a quick Bible lesson.
Maybe jump in the chat and let us
Yep.
know who, if you've seen Wicked, if you're familiar with the story, or you need DE to give some background.
Let me give a quick background. If you haven't seen Wicked, so Wicked is a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz kind of opens with, Dorothy goes into Munchkin Land, and they have killed the Wicked Witch. And so they're all celebrating the death of the Wicked Witch. So Wicked goes back pre-Wizard of Oz, and asks the question, what makes a person wicked? Was the Wicked Witch, or Elphaba, did she just want to be wicked? Was she born into an environment of intolerance and neglect? Because her skin was a different color, did it force her to create some sense of defensive mechanisms that maybe the prevailing culture did not understand in some ways? And so the song there is, no one mourns the wicked. But what about the life of the wicked? What about those who die in prison, who maybe grow up without socioeconomic and educational opportunities or exposure, and they are just hustling to get by? We may not mourn that they die in the penal system, but they're still a human being. What were they born into? Were they just born wicked, or were they born in the image and likeness of God and good, but environmentally their influences created something that maybe those of us who've experienced some privilege don't understand, but maybe we can be empathetic and compassionate to it. That's the whole shtick of Wicked, is trying to understand Elphaba's life as being born green and trying to be her authentic self and be comfortable in her skin around what's kind of just whiteness, just kind of the prevailing, kind of Western Eurocentric culture. Okay, so that's a little background for Wicked.
So Ruben asked, so she was rejected?
She was rejected by her father when she was born. He did not like that she was born of a different skin color. She had a younger sister who was a more normal color. In the movie, she's kind of looks maybe biracial. Father, black mother, white father. But it's obvious that the father kind of dotes on the younger sister, who is a normal skin color, but the sister who's green is kind of pushed off to the side and wanted to be seen but not heard, kind of thing. That was kind of Elphaba's life.
Good comment here. CJ said very similar to Maleficent.
Absolutely, CJ. Maleficent in the I think it's the Snow White series is okay. So let's go back prequel. What made Maleficent? She wasn't born evil. She wasn't born wicked. She went through some traumas and some rejection and some, she had to brush up against people not understanding her and neglecting her and even abusing her and ostracizing her. And so her family became the animals, and she fit. That's where she fit in. And so her wickedness was a critique of the prevailing culture, right? In Maleficent. And so, you find some intersectionality. There's an academic word for you, with Elphaba's character and Maleficent. Great connection there, CJ. Absolutely perfect. All right, so let me give you a quick biblical background. In biblical literacy, you have kind of this Semitic narrative that everybody in and around Jerusalem, Judea, even Samaria to some degree, are considered kind of normal. Even if they're not completely like us, we can condition them and change them to be like us. But what we find is people who are in the uttermost parts of the world, they become Gentiles or they become others, whether it's the eunuchs from Ethiopia, people from different parts of Greece, Athens, the Hellenists, they become like, they're not really the accepted part of our hegemonic experience. And so we kind of find this in the Bible, that anyone who is considered part of God's people, it's about proximity. It's about geography. And if you're not born in and around Jerusalem or the, kind of that triune metropolis, you're not really quite right. And your culture is weird, your language is weird, your skin color may be weird. So this is not just the movie Wicked. We find these narratives in Scripture. We find othering all through it. Let me throw one more, then I want to take some questions. I don't want to get too far in it. I want to introduce a word to you that some of you've heard me say before. It is apokatastasis. And some in the Greek scholarship would say apokatastasis, but I find that confusing, even that may be more of the correct pronunciation, because we use words like apocalypse. So to say apokatastasis sounds a little bit more familiar to our English speaking world, although our Greek brothers and sisters may say you're pronouncing that wrong, and we apologize for that. Please forgive us for that. But apokatastasis is an early church doctrine of our earliest church fathers, which would be Pantaenus, Origen, Clement of Alexandria, they all prescribe to the reconciliation of the world, that through Christ, the world has been reconciled to God. There's nothing you could do about it. Everyone is saved. However, there was a caveat to that of this afterlife, that God's redeeming nature would even continue with people in the afterlife, meaning even the wicked will eventually go to heaven, but they may have to be purged or taught, or they may have to work out some of their salvation in this afterlife experience. And so it was not considered punishment. It was considered purgative. It wasn't considered torture. It was considered the redemptive teaching of the nature of a redemptive creator, that even though some people may have behaved wickedly, whether that was environmental or whether it was something that was chosen by them deterministically, that there was still hope for them, but there might be some sort of sense of justice in the afterlife. They would have to kind of work through some of their atrocities, and then finally, watch this, Revelation chapter 21 and 22, outside the gates are the dogs, the liars, those who practice other things, whatever. They are now out of the lake of fire, purging brimstone, which is medicinal, aeon, not eternal, but for an age. And they are outside of the gates of heaven. What are they waiting on? They're waiting on the Spirit and the bride to say, come. That is not eschatological. It's not dispensational. We always thought they were saying, the Spirit and the bride are saying, come, Lord Jesus, return to earth and whisk us off on your winged white horse and your feet of brass and eyes of fire. That's imagery. That's not the context of the verse. It is the church, okay, and the Holy Ghost saying to those who have been purged in the atoning fires of the afterlife, you are now ready. You have washed your robes. You thirst. Why? You've been in the fire. Come and drink freely, whosoever will. That's kind of it. So I wanted to throw that biblical narrative in there for you, that even whatever your perception is of Elphaba or Maleficent, or someone maybe who was born in Jeffrey Dahmer, who was born in kind of white middle class privilege, but ate people and murdered people, mostly people of color, Mexicans and African Americans. And so I get it that everyone is not just in a difficult environment that becomes criminal in their mind. Some are they just choose to be evil, or maybe they're born that way. Even in that narrative, there is still a redeeming work for them, ecclesiologically and biblically, that in the afterlife, the Redeemer, Origen, Clement of Alexandria, St. Jerome, Gregory of Nyssa, all these early church fathers are saying it is the nature and character of God to redeem. So whatever your take on Elphaba or Maleficent is, there is still redemption, whether it's environmental influences, all that's good. Okay, one more quick thing, and then we'll jump in. Brandy and I fell in love with a show called Dexter. You guys familiar with the show Dexter? Michael C. Hall. He is, his mother was kind of like a crackhead drug dealer. His earliest exposure was his mother being cut to pieces with a chainsaw, and he sits in her blood for like 5 days as a baby, as an infant in a diaper, finally rescued by a police investigator who kind of adopts him as his son. But because of his environmental trauma, he has murderous tendencies. Yet he learns to navigate his desire to murder to only kill killers. He is a serial killer that is only killing other serial killers. So it's this bizarre take on, you start cheering for Dexter, like, yes, Dexter is a vigilante for justice. And my question with the Elphaba narrative or wicked narrative is, well, so we're cheering for Dexter, his environment caused him to be a serial killer, but he's killing other serial killers. What about their environments? What about empathy for what they went through as a child? What caused them to be the persons that they are? And if you've seen the movie The Shack, where does it end? Where does these generational traumas and lower vibrations of consciousness, where does it end? Who do we blame? Did we go all the way back to this allegorical man named Adam? Where does it end? Maybe it doesn't end. It begins with our compassion, our empathy, our willingness to see another person's story. All right, I've talked too long. Anybody have anything, Brenda?
Let's see. Yeah, I'll kind of jump back a little bit and show a couple comments here. Gaia said that film, I think she was, I'm sorry, I don't know. Gaia was referring to Wizard of Oz.
Mhm.
That film tripped me out as a small kid. I thought the world was black and white until we got color.
Yeah.
Now historians are talking about how ancient Greece didn't have a word for blue. Fun topics.
How bizarre. How bizarre is that? Yeah. I remember as a kid watching, because I had a, if you remember this guy, I had a television that had knobs on it. You had like the VHF, the UHF. One of my televisions was a hand-me-down from my parents that actually had a hanger, a wire hanger in it to try to get, with tin foil, trying to get the antenna, just right. But I remember when color television just became a thing. It certainly was. It was a new experience. Yeah. Thanks, Guy.
So our dear friend here, look here, Reverend Nicholas O'Rourke.
What, Jim? No. The Honorable.
I know.
Reverend Nicholas O'Rourke, who, if you give him 20 seconds, he can explain apocatastasis and universal salvation and knows about Pelagius that quickly. He's a scholar. Thanks, Reverend.
All right. Again, these are some comments going back just a little bit. Jabbar said, I grew up listening to basically music from the 70s. I still like listening to the Carpenters.
Mhm.
I like the song by the Carpenters, Call on Help.
So share with us the lyrics. I'm not exactly sure what those lyrics are, but yeah, I think the Carpenters remind us of an ability just for us all to get along and to love each other.
Yeah. Gaia also shared, survival isn't sin. When the church recognizes this, we can truly start to move forward.
Yeah. Survival. So think about that for a minute, Gaia. And of course, you are thinking about it, but think about just the narrative that we might be exposed to during the French Revolution. You have this incredible gap, this disparity between the haves and have-nots that is so blatant that those a part of the aristocracy, the oligarchy, the higher order, I believe it was Marie Antoinette who was approached and said, look, the vassals, the villagers, the peasants are starving. They don't have any meat and bread to eat. And her response was, let them eat cake. In essence, well, if they've run out of bread and meat, let them eat the delicacies of cake, not even realizing you are so far removed from the common man's financial struggle. If they don't have bread or meat, they don't have cake, sweetheart. And so in that way, is it more of a sin to steal bread, to steal potatoes from a local market than it is for people to hoard wealth? What is the sin here? Is it a sin for those who were born in poverty in a capitalistic society that tells, those whose ancestors provided 200 years of free slave labor, pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Chew on it for a minute. Is it really more of a sin to deny someone universal health care and education and exposure and opportunity than it is for someone to steal bread because their siblings are starving to death? What is the sin? Is the sin theft or is it hoarding wealth? And apply that now to the framework of the Jesus teaching. What Jesus teaches about sharing our wealth with others. Interesting point. Thanks, Gaia.
Yeah, one more comment here from Gaia. We talked about Maleficent. Said, notice the green symbolism with Maleficent's green fire as well. I never thought of that, but I know what you're talking about.
All connected again. So let's stay there. What does green mean? Let's talk. Talk to me, people. What does green just mean? Is it just limited to green skin? Why do I ask that question? Because for me, I think green is expansive. Any person, people, group that feels disenfranchised or marginalized are green. You are the alphabet. And the whole narrative of the story is See it. Feel it. Don't look away from it. What does that mean? Let's talk about biblical history and civil and human rights. So think about the slow crawl religiously towards seeing the green. Okay, the first thing we had to see was, okay, even though the Bible never denounces owning someone, owning a human being, whether it is an indentured servant or just an outright slave, it's wrong. This is wrong. This is a horrible thing. Humans can't own other humans. Okay. So watch this. So in that framework, the green was slavery. But here's the problem. We could have applied that green to every other social ill. We could have applied the learning of slavery to women's rights, immigrants' rights, the same gender loving and Q plus communities' rights. But we have to keep learning who's green. So we slowly crawl into, okay, we shouldn't own people. And then some hundreds of years later, we slowly realize, well, maybe women aren't to be owned. They're not given away as a property. They're not like cattle of a field. Maybe women should have the right to learn to read, be educated, drive a car, have a career, be able to speak in church if they have an anointing or a gifting. Okay, so then we got that one under our belt. Well, now we got to deal with, okay, there's gay people in the choir, there's same gender loving people on the Hammond organ, but they can help us with praise and worship, but they can't really be in leadership because they're an abomination. And so now we got to learn that green lesson. Now we got to slowly learn that Elphaba is not just a green person. Elphaba is the immigrant. Elphaba is the slave. Elphaba is the woman's rights. Elphaba is the Q plus rights. Elphaba is the immigrant. By the way, Jesus was an immigrant and a refugee. Good evening. I hate to be that way, but that is the truth. Okay. So green is not just a person's skin color. It's a framework that we can apply to all people who are hurting in some ways. And so, sorry, had to break that down for you right there. Anybody else?
Yeah, we have a lot of good comments queued up here. Let's get through them. Let's see. CJ said, "All of us may be wicked to someone." That's a really excellent comment.
So CJ, that is brilliant. Yeah. I just finished. I finished doing my first final paper in my first semester of my doctoral work, and part of it was about, I was trying to put into conversation universal salvation and justice. That's difficult. And I wanted to be sympathetic, especially to the historic Black church that may be struggling with universal salvation, because what do we do with slave masters? To our Jewish brothers and sisters, what do we do with Hitler? That's difficult. Okay, so if everybody's saved, then Hitler and Bull Connor all go to the same heaven. Okay, I get it. It's problematic. So let's jump back into apocatastasis and talk about eventually they make it to whatever heaven is, but there might be some working out of some things in the afterlife. It was a beautiful paper. During the process of that, I interviewed, I don't know, at least a dozen different people for the paper. One of my interviewees was Rantiade Ruth Benson Idahosa, who is kind of my adopted sister for many years. She lives in Abuja, Nigeria. But she started a nonprofit about a decade ago, and her nonprofit was actually to help curb sex trafficking in Nigeria. She is a retired attorney, a partnered lawyer, Manhattan law firm, very proud of her. She started this amazing nonprofit called Pathfinders for Justice. And she did work as an attorney helping to prosecute those who sell children, women, young men, into sex slavery or sex trafficking. So I wanted to interview her because she is inclusively minded. I said, how do you process universal salvation with sex trafficking? Do sex traffickers go to the same heaven as Mother Teresa or Desmond Tutu? How do we deal with this? She said to me, CJ, she said to me, DE, I approach those who sell children into sex trafficking with compassion. I said, really? I said, speak on that. She said, well, no native Nigerian is born thinking, I want to grow up and be a sex trafficker. She said, they're exposed to poverty. They're exposed to limited resources. Maybe they have some tragedy or trauma in their lives, and they fall into that line of work trying to care for their family, but they don't have a picture of the collective consciousness. And it was a brilliant interview. She was able to approach that with justice for those who were trafficked, but also for some level of empathy to bring the victim and the victimizer into the same space, and also to notice a colonial system of collective victimization. I thought, this is why you're my sister. This is why your voice is in my life. Brilliant, CJ. Thank you.
Yeah, so many good comments to get to, by the way. Just this is excellent.
I'll stop talking. Y'all talk.
So, no. This is I'm going to kind of skip one of Pastor Mike's to get to a couple, and then I'll come back to you, Mike. I'm kind of reordering here on the fly.
Yep.
Panita shared rejection. Behavior reflects rejection.
Yeah. In many ways. What if being green is a teenage girl who becomes loose in high school, just kind of searching for her dad's affirmation? Can we not have compassion toward that? Rejection. Those who are not part of the prevailing culture in their high school, their junior high, always looking for their tribe. Yeah, that can turn into some counterculture. I have a lot of love for those who, even white kids who are considered goth, who are the kind of the artsy fartsy kids. I was an athlete. I played Division I basketball, but I never was cruel to people of different expression. Actually, I was raised by a musical savant, so that's part of it. But I understand when look. Hey, let's be really controversial. Who made that comment? Panita. Can we really? We're on Gospel of Inclusion, so let's talk some shift. So when a school shooting happens, which is horrific, it's unthinkable when someone walks into a elementary school or high school and shoots children. Do we ever look at the life of the shooter? I'm certainly not justifying it. I was fearful for my children's lives at times. I get it. I've ministered to people on death row, and I've ministered to those who were victims of their family being raped or murdered. I've been on both sides of it. But do we ever stop and talk about the bullying that may have taken place in a school shooter who dressed differently, or maybe was same-gender loving, or maybe was part of the artsy-fartsy crowd that was a counterculture? And, the popular, I want to be popular. The popular kids.
You sang that great.
Want to be popular. Yeah. The popular kids bullied long enough to where somebody said, I've had enough.
Yeah.
You don't justify it in any way. There's no justification for murdering people in the school. But do you ever take a moment and say, who created the school shooter? What environment was that? It's at least worth a thought. Yeah.
That alone, that example alone is the movie.
Yeah.
That is what the challenge of the movie. I know that it's real easy to, it's Broadway and they sound so great, but if you really consider, because like you were saying the other day when we were watching it, it's a critique of popularity and what that looks like and what that does to other people. So
think about Brandon and I raising our children in a kind of an affluent area with great public schools. We had to constantly tell our children, do not buy into the narrative. Do not let these rich kids tell you what is right and what is wrong. Yeah. If you want, my daughter almost got into physical altercations in high school. My son actually got into at least one. And I want to credit the teacher who saw it happen. There was a young man in the locker room who they perceived was same-gender loving, being bullied. Micah was a star athlete, and he put his hands on somebody who was bullying the bully. Micah bullied the bully. And he said, Dad, the teacher saw me do it. And she looked the other way. And I said, well, thank God for a teacher who understands justice, taking up for those who may not have a voice. And thank you, Micah, for doing that. But Please don't, please don't get suspended. Don't get expelled from school. But my daughter was the same way. She had one of her closest high school friends, I won't say his name, but spent the night at her house all the time. They slept in the same bed. We knew that he was same gender loving. They were raised like siblings. He was a precious young man. If anyone talked to him, she would say, "Oh no, you will not speak to him in that way." So what is it that we're exposing our children to? Popularity, fitting in, bullying others to promote yourself as being popular? Is that really what strength is about? That is the story of Wicked. That is the narrative of school shooting. That is what we see, gang activity. All of these things don't just happen someday. They're environmentally influenced in some ways. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. And another thing that I find is interesting, and again, not to derail, I want to get to these comments, but as much as you kind of walk away feeling, you feel proud of Galinda for what she did. In a way, it was because it would serve her, and it in some ways, got her some hand claps, and that. But I think that's what makes it so powerful. I mean, frankly, people like you, DE, you don't have anything to gain from it, but we stick up. So anyway, okay, let me
say this too, for those who might see my skin color. First of all, I'm aware of my privilege, and I'm in the process of learning about the narrative of white savior complex, which I saw in Galinda to some degree. Galinda wanted to help Elphaba be normal.
Yeah.
Let me show you how to do your hair, your makeup. Let me dress you differently. Be like me. Of course, I've never been that. But I have sensed that at times, even with my expressions in other countries now. Let me help you understand inclusion and what the white colonial mind did to you. And that's not my job. My job is just to be me. I cannot save African, Middle Eastern, Asian countries from white colonialism. I'm just called to be me. So I'm having to learn that I have to be aware of my white savior complex. And I think it's at least altruistic on my part. I'm not trying to get anything back from it, but I did see myself a little bit in Galinda, and it's good for us to be aware. It's good.
Yeah, so many great comments coming in. Okay, so this is one I want to read because I'm not sure what your response will be here. It's a question, and I don't know how often you're either mistaken or / accused of this. I'm sorry that I don't recall what we were discussing at the time. This has been a couple minutes ago, but Renee asked, "Is this guy a Catholic priest?" And so, Renee, I just wanted to share that because if you want to jump in the chat and remind me what we were talking, Renee shared, "Is this guy a Catholic priest? Because this is what the Vatican is still teaching." So I'm not exactly sure what you were on, but
please remind us. I'd love to speak to it, but and if it's a critique in some ways, we're always open to that. So
absolutely, jump in and remind us, since that was about 20 minutes ago. Okay, Elise shared, "Being born green could just mean being born unique."
Unique, yeah. Is different really wrong? What is the definition of beauty or right or holy or what are those things? That's great.
CJ shared, "Green represents healing, heart chakra, and love." How ironic.
Interesting color. Yeah. I'll take some greens for my black eyed peas, a little bit of Skrillo and some money coming my way this year. Yeah. The heart chakra, the openness. Beautiful.
Another comment that was a while ago, I'm not really sure exactly what you were discussing, but teal lotus, which I love. Teal is kind of greenish, but the Bible doesn't say it's wrong though. And I think that was kind of a little bit of a joke.
What's wrong?
I don't know what we were discussing, but jump in and it's one of those things where the Bible doesn't say it's wrong. Cynthia shared green envy. So maybe green represents envy.
Envy, yeah. And maybe there is some envy for those who are comfortable in their own green way. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Once you get over peer pressure and once you're not looking constant, all of us want affirmation to some degree, especially from our tribe. But there is a little bit of a graduation from I don't need everyone to get me. And some people, they get envious of that I don't need your approval. That's some green envy. I love it.
Let's see here. I like this. Gaia said, this is deep. It's like color psychology mixed with integral theory.
I love it, guys. Thank you.
All right. You're going to like this one. Dr. Frazier, isn't it true that inclusivity is green, so to speak?
Mhm.
Because we are a remnant of people that are our own spiritual society. This is the greatest confirmation bias that is secretly recognized in one's heart.
King Frazier, just knock the ball out of the park, why don't you? When Brain and I were watching Wicked, we thought, we are Elphaba. Of course, we're speaking from our white skin, but we've chosen to be part of an inclusive model for at least for most of our lives, very intensively for the last 20 years. We've chosen to be green. I wasn't born green, but I've chosen to be something different. And inclusion is the green Elphaba of Christendom. And we don't want to be anything. We want to be green. That's just who we are. Beautiful.
Let's see here. Let me jump back up to Pastor Mike's comment. Being green means to be unique, special, different, one of a kind. And we learned from the movie that the character we all thought was wicked, since the book was written in 1900, was not the wicked one. Glinda, the good witch, and the wizard, and others were actually, they were wicked too, who became known as the Wicked Witch of the West.
Woo! So Mike, leave it to Mike to open up this right here. Okay, that big deep breath, everybody. So what if the Christian church that you think is the sheep are actually the goats? And I'll be very, very diplomatic with my comments here. There are some trends in society right now, and I won't even say what those trends are because I don't want to estrange people. I want to include you. But if you look at the social trends in America right now, what the majority voice is saying is not the description of Jesus of Nazareth. Yeah, just look at the polls, read them. They are the description, Matthew chapter 25. Look at that green. Yeah,
I turned it to green for you.
Look at the description of Matthew 25 when Jesus says, "Who are the goats?" Who privilege, wealth, security, closing doors, not allowing other people in. Is that the wickedness that is now the prevailing Christian dominant culture? And those of us who are the sheep, who are the green ones, who want to include others, who are loving with our open hearts, are the ones considered wicked when the whole time, how about the plot twist, Mike? The wickedness is the Christian church. I ain't saying, I'm just saying, as a follower of Jesus, as a follower of the Christ mind, I don't see Jesus in the Christian church right now. That's just what I'm saying. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I should have had the color back there green all along, shouldn't I?
What?
I like this. Bishop Aaron McClary said the Paulks have always been green. They got in a lot of shift.
Born white, but green at heart, for sure, Bishop McClary. Thank you.
Lorraine agreed here. Being born green is being born outside of the mainstream.
Yeah, especially Lorraine. I think, if I understand your background to some degree, especially being exposed to the artistic world, you're exposed to so much uniqueness and diversity of expression, and green. You're exposed to so much greenness. Why would we want to create everyone else in our image? Isn't it okay for people to be who they are? I love it that on Sunday morning at Spirit and Truth Sanctuary, I look on the stage and one of our percussionists, Sheriff Ken Morton, is dressed to the nines with his bow tie and just looking like a handsome Denzel Washington standing up there. And Miss Diane Froman has got her bright green Jordans on. And Cynthia's got a classic, blazer on. And our drummer has got a tank top on. And our keyboardist has got his... and I've got my, academic look going. Why do we have to look like each other? Can we not celebrate the greenness in all of us? Yeah, that's the beauty of who we are. Thanks.
All right, Ruben shared the horrors of humanity, because we talked about this a minute ago, can actually broaden our hearts towards those who bring the calamity.
Ruben, this is it's a touchy conversation. Thank you for lifting that. I was riding in a car with Bishop Pearson. We were doing a show in Detroit on the Word Network. Shout out to Lexi, who's always been a good friend of ours. And we were riding back to the hotel after a long day of interviews and talking to people. And I said, CDP, help me with this. I don't really believe in hell. And if there is a hell, I think it's reforming, not retributive. But how do we answer the question of Hitler? How do we do that? As we're trying to kind of do this movement, what do we say about Hitler? And he said, let's put it in this context. What's your narrative of God? And what is God's gas chamber? And I went, what do you mean? He said, well, Hitler is such a horrible monster because he burned millions of people in gas chambers. But they at least died, and they're done with their torture now. He said, but what's the accepted vision of God? That if you're born in China or Japan or Ethiopia or wherever, and you're a Muslim or a Buddhist, or you're born in Europe and you're an atheist or a humanist or an agnostic, that God is going to burn you if you don't accept our understanding of the westernized Jesus of Nazareth. You're going to burn in an eternal gas chamber. So we're weird about Hitler, but we praise God because it's in some sort of sovereignty or holiness narrative. And man, I went to sleep that night. We would usually talk. We slept in the same hotel room. I would talk to him till 2 o'clock. I went to bed quiet that night thinking, that's a lot to think about. And of course, it in no way is justifying genocide or anti-Semitism in any way. I'm an interfaith guy. But the picture of God as the ultimate Hitler, burning people eternally in a gas chamber, it certainly doesn't answer a question, but it raises some important questions, doesn't it, Ruben? Thanks for lifting that. It's good.
So someone asked, let me see. Oh, I think it was Ruben. Is Wicked based on the same collection of books from The Wizard of Oz? The answer is no. Wizard of Oz was written many, many, many years ago, and Wicked was written more recently, like maybe even in the 80s. So totally different authors, not connected in any way, but it was an interesting retelling or prequel to go back and maybe rethink or represent the story of the Wicked Witch of the West.
What about this, Ruben? What about the Gospel of Judas? Whoops. Yeah, that's polemic, isn't it? It's a little controversial. There was the Gospel of Judas that was found, I think, in the 1960s, carbon dated to about the time of Jesus, about 100 years later. But as we know, the first gospel was not written until 100 years into the Common Era, which means our first gospel is Mark. That it was oral tradition being passed down at least 2 generations before we even get to a gospel, much less a canonization. The Council of Laodicea in the 4th century Common Era. But think about the Gospel of Judas being written about the time of the Q sources of those that informed the Gospel of Mark, and the Gospel of Judas written on papyrus paper, saying basically Judas saying, or those scribing, pseudonymously describing Judas's work, I didn't want to. I love Jesus. I didn't want to send him to the cross. He asked me to do it. What if we get to heaven and Judas has a bigger crown than any of the other disciples? And I'm not saying I don't believe it or disbelieve it. You guys know me. I don't have beliefs. It's just, I consider it. What if the narrative around Judas has been wrong? If Judas was so evil, why did he hang himself out of guilt afterwards? He was not reprobate. He was emotional. He was feeling this thing. Judas, watch this, what you must do it more quickly than you initially planned. That's the original etymologies of that. And so I don't know. I don't have the answers, people. I haven't died and gone to heaven. I don't know what's out there. But I would not be surprised if in the next iteration, there's some people there that we may not expect to be holding places of honor. Just my 2 cents. Thanks, Ruben.
Okay, really quickly, quick little side break. Just talk quickly about Wednesday night.
Okay.
That we're not going to be live every single Tuesday in 2025,
Yeah.
but we're still working some things out.
Yeah.
Talk about Wednesday, and then let's get back to the comments because there are a lot of really great comments.
Okay. So Brandy has to travel some for her job. We're very grateful for her job, but it does include some travel at times, which kind of handicaps us to some degree. I cannot navigate the technology myself because I am technologically illiterate. Amen, somebody. Also, I am in my doctoral work, which is very intense. I speak about 5 times a week right now, so it is a bit of a heavy load. And so we may not be live every single Tuesday. There may be some other shifts that we make, but just wanted to communicate with you guys. We're certainly never going to leave you high and dry. We are committed to the gospel of inclusion, probably for the rest of my life. Receive that anyway. But just be flexible with us as we work that out. Tomorrow night, we will be teaching once again. Every Wednesday night.
Make sure they understand that it's a different platform.
It's a different platform. We can get onto us at Spirit and Truth Sanctuary, and that's mytruthsanctuary.com. I think you can.
It's here. It's on the screen.
It's there for you if you want to connect. We teach from Bishop Pearson's The Gospel of Inclusion every Wednesday night. We always have amazing prompts and questions. I teach for about 25 or 30 minutes, and then we just open it up.
It's a deep dive.
It's a deep dive.
Literally every page in the book you're going through.
We talk scriptural. We talk Bible. We talk theology. We talk early church doctrine. We talk Carlton Pearson progression. We dive into kind of the understanding of the gospel inclusion. That's 7:30 Eastern Wednesday nights. So thanks for joining us with that.
All right, let's jump back into the comments here. So we had talked a little bit about you brought up Dexter, and some people made some comments. You talked about bullies. So I wanted to go back. Jermaine shared, I was the bully's bully, still am too, to a certain extent.
I was.
Feel like a calling to protect those that can't help themselves, and then followed that up with a comment: different should be embraced. Fitting in could be problematic. For example, if society has practices that are harmful to humanity, the different could be the one to break through the harmfulness.
Yeah, thank you, Jermaine. I think we are some kin. We're family. I try to say this cautiously, but I feel like I'm whatever handsome means. I was a pretty good-looking younger guy. I'm not aging that gracefully, but it is what it is. Brandy's got to buy me some better lotion. White does crack, apparently. I was always fairly tall. I'm about 6'2". When I graduated from college, I was 230 pounds, mostly muscle, very athletic, very physically strong, but completely, as far as I can tell, completely heterosexual. But my lifelong best friend is same gender loving. And I've always felt that, I don't know if it's privilege or to use some sort of platform to speak with and for those in the margins, to try to use, whether it's my white skin or my maleness or my heteronormativity, to speak for those who were being spoken against. And I used to say things like to give voice to those who don't have a voice. I think that was some white savior complex coming out. I mean, James Baldwin is one of the greatest voices of our lifetimes. He was a same gender loving African-American man who is considered one of the greatest human and civil rights voices. And so I can't give voice to James Baldwin, but I can support his voice. I can bring my voice to his voice. And so I honor that, Jermaine. Thank you for being who you are.
You are going to love who was on tonight. I know you will want to give a shout out to Dr. LaCara Foster.
What?
This is so good.
She texted me earlier and said, I love you. Hope all is well. I love you so much. You're such a brilliant voice. Thank you, Doctor, for being here.
Let's see. I'm going to try to grab a comment.
I want to know if Dr. Foster saw Wicked. I want to know because you are green. Everything about you is green, Dr. Foster. You are unique and peculiar in every environment you go into. And so I want to know what greenness means to you, Dr. Foster.
And I guess, by the way, if you haven't seen it, it's highly recommended. You should go see.
Amazing.
Or you can you can rent it now on TV.
It's worth the $14 or whatever it is.
Okay, so let's see here. Malek said valid points. We were talking about this earlier. Many youth are pressure cookers and have no safe or sane way to release in a healthy manner.
So think about that. Let me look. Is Malik or Malik? Please help us with the pronunciation. But think about when a bomb is set off. Okay, it's awful. There's tragedy. I had a friend who was in the trade towers the day of 9/11 and just miraculously got out. Traumatic. And so the bombs that were set off that day, someone created those bombs. Can we talk? Can we go deeper? Can we go in a deep dive right here? No justification, especially if you have family that was involved. I can't watch it. It's so traumatic to me to watch 9/11. But someone created the bombs that went off, but someone created the people who created the bombs. That's difficult, isn't it? Whether that be religious literalism in Islam, whether that be westernized robbing of natural resources in lands that oil is their main resource, whether that be Christian capitalistic desiring of promoting one group over another in the Middle Eastern quadrant, okay, in Semitic areas. So it's not just a bomb to be blamed. It's not just a radicalized religious mind that was raised in poverty or disenfranchisement that created a bomb. There was something that created the person that created the bomb. How far do you want to go into spiral dynamics to understand where evil comes from? Maybe, just maybe, the love of money is the root of all evil. Greed. I was reading philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who is a Swiss philosopher. I was in Switzerland reading a Swiss philosopher. I thought I was so suchy much with my intellectualism. But I'm reading Rousseau, who said the first and greatest evil was the person who planted a flag and says, "This is my land," and created a boundary. This is mine. This is not yours. And he said, when did we stop belonging to each other? When did we start claiming things that this is mine and not yours? He influenced Karl Marx, many of the great philosophers throughout that time period. But one of his ideas was when you claim something belongs to me and doesn't belong, when you say no trespassing, you're creating evil. And so when things explode, it's not just the explosion to be blamed. Where did that explosion come from? We need some education, don't we? Thank you for that comment.
Dr. Lacara responded, I watched the first half last night and watching the second half tonight. I was so excited when I saw you all would be speaking about the movie tonight, and I'm loving this so much. She said, love you both immensely. We love you too. And she said, hashtag we are green. That should be our new hashtag we
Doctor,
are green.
I've seen you in in a green dress before, and you were killing it. So you are culturally, religiously, spiritually green, and you are literally green at times. Love you, doctor. Thanks for being here.
Love you too, lady. I hope to see you soon. Let's see here. Terry Johnson shared, maybe if people weren't afraid to be their authentic self, we would all be green.
Yeah. Not afraid to be their authentic selves, and us not afraid to let them be their authentic selves. You know, Terry, I'll admit this to you. I have 2 children that you know, because you're part of our Spirit and Truth family. And I think you can tell I've never tried to make Esther wear my clothes. She wanted to be in medicine. I could have said, no, Esther, you are called to be the prophet of God. You're going to be a preacher. Micah, you're going to be the next bishop of inclusion. I can't tell them what their destinies are. They need to be their own green, right, Terry? I need to be my green. When Brandon and I got married, the context of what we knew as first ladies, Brandy fit none of that. Brandy is not demure. She is not going to be subjugated. She's not going to be quiet about her opinion. She's not going to sit with her white dress and her gloves and her hat on in church. Brandy is going to be running things. She is brilliant. She makes great money. She is going to be opinionated about the church. If somebody says something out of the way, she's going to be pretty patient about 80 times. The 81st time she's going to say, "Who do you think you're talking to?" I mean, Brandy was just not the prototypical first lady. So in that way, she was a green pastor's wife. And aren't we beneficiaries of that? That we didn't try to mold her into some, wearing a lap cloth on her legs. Brandy gets there before anybody and leaves last. She's there setting up mics and doing sound checks and running the technology. She's not whisked in, paraded in as the first lady. Why do we want Brandy to wear our clothes? Don't we benefit from her greenness? I think all of us do, Terry. We all benefit from each other being green and allowing each other to be green.
All right, so this is going to challenge us a little bit because it's fresh, and I get that. But you brought this up, and I think that's what we're here for, is to be challenged. But I love this. Mary Lewis shared, "I've wondered the real story of the New Year's man that killed the people in New Orleans."
Yeah, it is so fresh, isn't it? Yeah. What's the comics say? Too soon? Too soon?
Yeah. Well, as a follow-up, well, go ahead. You want to speak to that first? Sorry.
No, I think it's imperative for us, Mary, is it ever too soon? Is it ever too soon to talk about why are these things happening? I'm a gun owner, Mary. I've bought a couple of guns in my life, but I inherited my grandfather's shotguns, and my dad has had some guns. I don't apologize for owning guns. If I were traveling, speaking somewhere, and my wife was here by herself and someone came in to do her harm, she knows exactly where the gun is and exactly what to do with it. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be compassion for the person breaking into the home. It's such a difficult conversation. I feel you. And I would hope to say, look, leave the house, get out. I'm not going to call the cops, but leave before this gets ugly. How do you say to somebody who's coming in your house, "I get that your life has been difficult, but I'm still not going to let you harm my family"? That's a difficult conversation, isn't it? I think all of us may sympathize with that to some degree on both sides. But what was the man's influences? How about this, Mary? How about, this is difficult for me to even say. How about those raised in a racist environment who all they know is white supremacy? Jesus, how do we deal with these people? I was thinking about the passing of President Jimmy Carter, I honor tremendously, especially as an Emory student. His name is all over Emory. He was an Emory professor. His wife's Rosalind Carter's homegoing was in Glenn Memorial, where I graduated from my master's degree at Emory. But he was not raised by racially inclusive parents. He was raised in Plains, Georgia, where there's a black part of town and a white part of town. That's how he was raised. We don't go where the coloreds are or whatever, even worse names. But he did not give into his environment. He became he was quoted as a president saying the greatest act of our lifetime was the Civil Rights Act. That took a lot for someone raised with racist ideology in Plains, Georgia, to live his life as a civil and human rights activist. Yeah, but what about the Jimmy Carters who don't get exposed to love, to inclusivity, to the higher? What about the Christian church who got saved, baptized, filled with the Holy Ghost under homophobic rhetoric? What about, forgive me for saying this as a white man, what about the prevailing homophobic culture in the Black church? Where does that come from? I did some study this last semester on some of the early Black nuclear families that were influenced by white puritanicalism and prudishness. What does that mean? Black people coming from African understandings of ancestral worship and sexuality, coming into a Puritan white ideology and trying to fit in or assimilate to survive in white culture financially. I'm just trying to survive as a Black family. I took on some homophobic rhetoric and conditioning that's not who I am. And so I had to step, because I've been very critical of the Black church. How can you be so civil rights, so pro Dr. King, and so anti gay rights? It doesn't make sense to me. You know how to nuance the Bible for slavery and women, and why can you not apply that to the hateful gay scriptures? I've been very critical. Now I'm learning empathy, and maybe that's what God is doing in me right now, is I'm being empathetic, not condoning homophobia in any way, but now I'm understanding where it comes from. Black families were trying to fit in with white mainline Christians for job opportunities, for equality. They adopted white homophobia. It's just time for teaching. It's time to understand where it comes from. It doesn't condone homophobia in any way, but it helps us to understand, I get it. And guess what? We're better than that. The Black prophetic pulpit and voice is coming back. It is strong. I see some openings in the consciousness of the Black church toward homophobia. There's an awakening that's happening. We give God thanks for all that. Thank you.
All right, a couple more quick ones here. I think this is interesting. Bishop McClary shared, even in The Wizard of Oz, we clap when the mean witch gets killed by Dorothy with the water. We celebrate it, right? Yeah.
And then we have to repent, don't we, Bishop, when we go back and learn the witch's story? Oh, maybe she wasn't as wicked as we thought she was. Maybe Dorothy represents heteronormativity and colonialism and, the status quo. What a great narrative. Thanks, Bishop.
Let's see here. Dr. Fraser shared the example of we're taught in the Bible in Exodus that God told Moses to tell Pharaoh to let his people go, yet he hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would resist. Is I am that I am working both sides of everything in our lives.
It's so funny, Dr. Fraser, that you brought that up, because I just had some notes for myself tonight. I have Romans chapter 9 and then Romans chapter 11, which is basically Paul saying, y'all can't figure God out. How are you going to send Pharaoh to hell if God hardened his heart, maybe using him to push him out of, who knows? And of course, Dr. Fraser, it makes us feel like God is a little bit of a chess master, and we're just kind of pawns on the chessboard, which leads into deism and fatalistic ideas, which all that can be problematic as well. I get the nuances and complexities of the conversation. However, for you to lift that at least gives us a different approach to how do we understand evil and wickedness? What is going on here? Thanks, Doctor.
All right, let's end with this. It's a pretty good comment. Actually, well, it would be easy to keep going.
I know.
We're gonna call this. Let's see. Jermaine shared, hey, that's good. The love of money is tearing the world apart in real time. Living through this time is heavy. I pray for relief for the generations that lived through similar times. Saw progress, but now we have to see that progress be essentially snatched away in the name of green paper with old white men on the front and God on the back.
Did you hear with that? Thanks for lifting that. Did you hear that there was some legislation being proposed to put Harriet Tubman on one of the dollar designations? I don't know if it was like the $5 bill, or I don't remember which one it was, but I thought that would be interesting to have Harriet Tubman's brown face on our green white dollars in some ways. But it's all a critique and a narrative. Thanks for lifting that.
Stan, I kind of reiterated that as well. And there are more comments we didn't get to here, but you all were amazing. This was excellent. Go see the movie.
Look at my green piece of paper. I didn't even plan this. This is my green.
It's supposed to be black.
It's supposed to be black, but I think our printer was out, so it printed green, because we're all green. If you're an inclusionist, you are green, by the way.
It was meant to be.
All right. If you have it in your heart tonight, this is the first show of 2025. The Carlton D. Pearson Legacy Foundation certainly benefits the Pearson family and others. Thanks for being generous tonight. I appreciate you guys. You can text to give any amount. Also use PayPal if you'd like to. I feel as one of Carlton Pearson's sons, a beautiful privilege and and to carry the burden of carrying on his name, his legacy, and to be a blessing to that. And anyways, Brandy and I do not benefit in any way, shape, or form from it. We certainly could defend that in any court of law. We don't take anything from it. We do it out of the goodness of our hearts. And so, but I do want to be a blessing to the Pearson legacy in any way that I can be. So give tonight if you'd like to. And we hope to see you guys tomorrow night on the book study, The Gospel of Inclusion. We'll dive deep. We're going to talk about sin tomorrow night. Interesting that we're talking about wickedness. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about sin. What does that really mean? Where does sin come from? What is the sin consciousness in the church? So
make sure if you want to be a part of that, you go follow Spirit and True Sanctuary.
Yeah, follow us, Spirit and True Sanctuary. There's some beautiful things happening. I want to tell you this. It got canceled because of snow this weekend, but I've been asked to be the keynote speaker at the ecumenical prayer breakfast of the new DeKalb CEO's inauguration, which is she wanted me to speak an interfaith message to about 300 clergy. If you're not familiar with DeKalb County is the largest, most populous county in Georgia. It was the county that decided the 2020 presidential election. It is the second most affluent African-American county in America, only second to Prince George's County in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. I have family up there. Shout out to my family. But it's a big deal. Inclusion is not just in the church house anymore. We are finding spaces in government. We are finding spaces internationally. January, I think the 30th of this month, Spirit and Truth Sanctuary Liverpool will be opening up. Luis Melancia opening up a similar expression in Recife, Brazil this year. Some wonderful things happening right now. It's a good time to be an architect of inclusion. We love you guys. We appreciate you more than you know. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Thanks for a great discussion tonight. I love it. Sorry, Renee, that we didn't get back to the Catholic thing. I would have loved to answer it if I knew what you were referring to. Anyway, we love you guys. Hope to see you tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. The Gospel of Inclusion. See you then.
I am connected to a love that never runs out. I am connected to a source that never runs out. I am connected to a love that never runs out. I am connected to a source that never runs out. I am connected.